when you started out, did you ever think you would have accomplished everything that you have to this date?
Well, when I finished university, I committed myself to playing and immediately went on a tour across Canada and the United States. And we went, Amanda came with me, and we went as far until I was broke. So, I knew what I was in for. Right. And I got back here. We lived in Ottawa for a month and then found this place up here. Not this exact building, and our landlord was a bit of a saint and charged us $90 a month. And I don't think that I could have made it as a musician without that. I worked at a local garage here pumping gas and changing tires. And in the wintertime, I taught ski racing. But other than that, I was looking for gigs and playing and writing all the time. So each week I'd write maybe between 9 and 11 songs, and then going into the open stages and Sunday night hoots and so on, and finally got attention somewhere. And I think it was maybe 4 years later, Sylvia Tyson heard one of my songs in the hallway at CBC in Toronto. I took my Sony tape, reel to reel down, and played it for some people, and she liked the song and played it on her television show. So that was like posting a bond.
So what would you say you're most proud of?
Oh, I guess my kids.
Good answer.
I think I just was at the Sugar Bush with my oldest son, Matthew, and I guess I'm proud that they're still talking to me and that they're still talking to each other. Some people come from fractious families.
Where do you find time to be as creative as you are? Because it's not just music. You playwright and you're an adventurer.
They all funnel down into the same thing. If it's not one thing, I would say that, having sort of released 44 albums in one form or another, that I wouldn't say I'm at the end of the road of songwriting, but I released an album last year, and with the changing platforms and music, I'm not as anxious to put out another album, because now if you release an album, if you're lucky, it takes 3 or 4 years to recover that investment. So I'm not as inclined to release albums anymore, and it's so much a young person's market that the demographic that would buy my albums is aging as I am. So you always find time, and to do a play, to write a play, it's usually 3 or 4 months to write a play, and to do an album's about the same, 3 or 4 months to do an album. And so that's easy. One time it will be a play, another time we'll be guiding a trip or something like that, Depends what hat I'm asked to put on. And sometimes it gets a bit heavy and thick, and other times you're going to do other things. Yeah.
How would you describe, because as you say, you had 40 plus albums, how would you describe the music that you play for someone that has never heard of Ian Tamblyn?
Well, I put it in 4 categories. I guess the singer-songwriter category would be one. I guess acoustic music would be another. There's another category that would fall into soundtrack and theater music, in which the music is determined by the play, not me. If I'm doing a play on Macbeth, I might have a take on the music, but the music is determined by, in some sense, by how Shakespeare wrote the play. Or if another play is set in Central America, well then it's probably best that I learn something about Central American music. So that category is huge. And then I've done a number of instrumental albums as well. And that has ranged from, some people would describe it as environmental music to industrial music. Some of it's quite avant-garde, I would say. So, I mean, I don't know how probably other people say, well, he put out some good music and some bad music, which is probably ultimately what the two categories are.
I have seen some of your albums described as ambient. And
Well, they were, or they are. And I definitely was interested in the sonic world of Brian Eno, David Byrne, Robert Fripp, all those people, and also sort of Test Department and Kraftwerk and other sort of heavier things like that, as well as jazz music. I'm interested in that as well. Probably more the ECM stuff than bebop, although I do listen to it, but the ECM label, there's some kinship with the stuff that I do.
Yeah, with ECM, you know what you're getting, don't you?
No, you're getting a sound. You're getting a sound and probably an approach which I kind of liked. I mean, there was a period where in novels, there was a publishing company that I knew what I could get from that publishing company, and I was seldom disappointed with City Likes Books. Would always
Bukowski. And,
Bukowski, Ferlinghetti, Corso, all those guys, and Neil Cassidy, other people like that. And then you found out who their friends were, and so your bookcase became filled with different people like that. So those would be the categories. I don't know, maybe somebody else would have one, but I'm just sort of looking. I've been associated with the acoustic music community by and large, though, I'd say. But at the same time, there's other people locally who knew me more for having rock bands, which were which I enjoyed and were necessities for me to survive. So, and other people, I'm just looking at another album over there on the shelf, know me as a hammer dulcimer player.
Yeah, that's right.
So, different things.
Good. Shall we take a look at some of your album choices?
Yeah.
So, your go-to album?
Well, my go-to album, I could change these every week. When you asked me to do this, I just went, okay. Well, Mark Knopfler's, who used to be with Dire Straits, has put out an awful lot of albums. Some of them are good. Some of them are kind of sleepy time. But when he's on his game, I really like his songwriting. I like his story writing. I like his guitar playing. And this album that I chose here is called Sailing into Philadelphia. And unfortunately, the cover on the album had a plane flying in, sort of a blurry picture and it was released the week of 9/11. It was just a disaster, but there's some beautiful songs on it. And one of them is called Race Day at Nazareth. And it has, if you play it in your car, if you're not going over the speed limit, at least by 50 clicks by the end of the song, you're not listening to the record. And Mark Knopfler is I think he's a motorcycle racer himself. He injured himself actually a few years ago, motorcycle racing, but he has a fascination with race cars as well. And so this is about that circuit.
Okay.
And at the end of it, it has a solo in it. That's not the notiest solo by any means, but it just has a great power built into the chords. There's just a natural acceleration in the tune. It's just fabulous. Also, I do it with James Taylor and Mark Knopfler playing Mason and Dixon. Okay. Two guys from England who came over to chart the Mason-Dixon line, the north-south border. And as portrayed by Knopfler in the song, I think Knopfler is the cynic and Taylor's the optimist in the group. And, you know, Mason is the doubter and Dixon is the optimist. Maybe I've got them reversed. I can't remember right now. But it's a well-drawn song. It's well done. And there's a couple of even clunky words in the song, but it works. And the third track on this Go-To album, I guess because there are a lot of good tracks on it, to my mind would be a song called Baloney Again. And it's about a gospel group in the States during the segregation period, where they're not allowed to go in the white man's rooms or anything. So they just pull up by a willow tree and use each other's shoulders to sleep on, and it's Baloney Again. It's a really good song. And I just came back from Mississippi, and I could well imagine that. You know, nearly so many of the groups have gospel origins to them, you know, whether it's Mississippi Fred McDowell or Sam Cooke or whoever it might be. The church isn't very far from the expression. And so, yeah, that would be my go-to album.
That's a good choice. Now we're going to take a look at your Sunday Morning album. This is an artist that I know nothing about.
You don't?
No.
Well, he's no longer with us. His name is Oliver Schroer, and the album is called El Camino. And after Oliver got a sort of terminal ticket, he embarked on several projects, and one was to walk the El Camino Trail and record fiddle in each one of the chapels that he went through on the way. And it's a stunning album, and it's perfect for that Sunday morning coffee and pancake or whatever you choose, a chocolatine. It's just a gorgeous album, just magnificent. And the reverbs are in the chapels are beautiful, and his playing sense is it's more. He's known as a fiddler, but these are violin compositions. And Oliver was also very well known for starting various groups around the country, and he had a group up in Smithers, BC, which a local guy here, James Stevens, has continued in some sense in his honor. But there were many people. Ann Lindsay, who plays with me and also plays with Blue Rodeo, she was highly influenced by Oliver Schroer. But this album has long legs to it. Yeah, it's a beautiful album.
Now, the very first album you bought is quite... It's like two ends, that your Sunday Morning and your very first. It's totally different album.
They are, totally. My first album that I bought, I ordered through the Columbia Record Club. So I got two, but I chose Ritchie Valens, because Ritchie Valens was, in 1957, a pretty hot guy. And I did choose La Bamba, but the album that I remember, there's another hit song from that album called Boney Maroney, which is really good. And another song which I think was a kind of like a surf, it could even be an instrumental, I can't remember, but there was a kind of surf sound to it, and Ritchie Valens kind of had that surf sound built into his stuff, even though he himself was Mexican. And certainly La Bamba was a Latin tune that I think, Los Lobos has covered, and probably 1,000 other people too. But the other one was Turkish Town. So there are three of them. And I haven't seen that album since 1962. So that's how deep an imprint that was. And then the other record that I got was Lefty Frizzell's Long Black Veil, which was also important. Then after that, it was all kind of Richie Valens was inspired by my babysitter who had a 45, and then she'd put the 45s on, and then I'd be her dancing partner, which is exciting for me, at age 9. But so, what was her name? Sandra Pilecki was my babysitter. It was so. All those were very informative now. Johnny Cash was another one. Johnny Horton was another big one. But then, Columbia Record Club would send you all this drivel along with, Brigadoon or, Sketch Henderson and his orchestra. And, those would pile up because you wouldn't send them back, so you would just be stuck with them. So finally my mother stopped after I had, 10 Johnny Horton albums. But also I got a Skeeter Davis album. We don't say no, it's the end of the world. It ended when you said. Well, Skeeter Davis was Johnny Horton's wife. And so when he died, that song, End of the World, really rang true for me.
Now, an album more people should hear.
Yes. This album, when it came out, was pilloried. And it should not have been it, because I think Van Morrison's Veed Fleece album is right up there with Astral Weeks. I think it's a really, really good album. Now, maybe it didn't have quite the impact that St. Dominic's Preview did, or even Hard Nose to the Highway, but it was a really good album, and was Van going back to Ireland and kind of playing with that stand-up bass, him playing guitars and then electric guitars and violins and occasional flutes too. Beautiful arrangements on it, and a very Celtic album for him. And a song that I'd recommend would be Lyndon Harden Stole the Highlights, or another song called The Streets of Arklow. Excellent. And then there's some songs which are as brilliant as they are ridiculous, There's this song called You Don't Pull No Punches, but You Don't Push the River, and the river is not. The river is not. And he keeps on saying that. And he gets into these sort of beat trances, in which he's almost reciting the mystic telephone book, the Sisters of Mercy and the Veed and Feast are talking about John Donne down by the river, and you don't pull, don't punch. And he just sort of goes on like this, and you go, at the same time, you go, oh, come on, Van. You celebrate his freedom to just borrow so freely from that, from the beat Bible, I guess, and the transcendental. He just drops every name that you possibly can as some sort of transcendent leap. Now, whether he ever achieved the leap, I don't know. I suspect he didn't. I read a biography on Van, and he had a troubled life. Wherever he could do good, he went the opposite direction, it would appear. Anyway, I still like his music. He went through a new age stage where they're pretty sleepy time. I don't know if he was trying to get over a contract with his company or not, but there's an album called Transitions in it. The transition didn't take. It just didn't take with me, I'll tell you. Anyway, there's other stuff that I really like. There's a later album where she had Washing Windows. I think it was an album that Mark Knopfler produced. It was very good. Mark Knopfler can pull the best out of people. He did with Bob Dylan too. Another album which I could have equally chosen, and not really a popular album either. An album called Slow Train Running by Dylan it's a neat album and well produced.
No, an album that stands the test of time.
This would be one of my favorite albums because the album is Judy Collins' In My Life, and it was the first album that introduced a series of songwriters across the spectrum, from from Kurt Weill, and Bertolt Brecht doing Marat Sade, and the Black Jenny, I think it was, the Black Pirate Jenny. It's a long time, and I haven't seen the album, but that's good. Then there was a Donovan song called Sunny Goodge Street, In My Life by the Beatles. There was a Joni Mitchell song on it. There was a James Taylor song. It was really the archetype for what became the songwriter album. And the next one that probably came out was Tom Rush's album, No Regrets. And they were really influential and broadened the scope of what I was listening to as acoustic music. When she was doing 4 years after the revolution and the old king's execution, suddenly we're into cabaret music, and I'm going, well, okay, I understand that for the political stuff, because I had read about Paul Marat. So it was exciting that way, really exciting. And Sunny Goodge Street was maybe one of the best songs that Donovan ever wrote, I think. So it's a very influential album for me. I don't have it anymore, and I wish I did.
And on that album also, she does Leonard Cohen, Suzanne.
That's right.
Yeah.
So she was the one that introduced all these people. She introduced, James Taylor. She introduced Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell too. And then Ian Tyson. She did Ian Tyson's song "Someday Soon." Had a hit with it actually, and then it flipped around. She did a song called "My Father," which is a really beautiful song that Nina Simone did. My father used to say that we would live in France. We'd go boating on the Thames. I would learn to dance. We lived in Ohio then. My father worked in a mine, and it's a really good song. So yes, I wish I had that album. I don't anymore. It's gone. And yet I keep it. I haven't, in theory, given up any album or any cassette or any reel-to-reel away. And CDs of, and other forms too, more endangered, like DATs.
Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah.
Now let's go to your favorite new album.
It came out 2 years ago, and he won the Canadian Folk Music English Songwriter of the Year award. His name's Ken Yates, and the album's called Huntsville. And it was produced locally by Jim Bryson, and it's well done. It's even. It works out really well. It's a very considered and sad album, and it's the type of thing when you have it on your own speakers, and it works. I saw him last summer, and it was one morose song after the other. And he's only got morose songs. So after a while, it sounds like he's a one-trick pony. We'll see if he is or not. But sometimes a thematic album like this one really worked. And there's some excellent songs on it. So we'll see what happens with his second album. Yeah, it's good. It's an excellent album. I can't recite lines off it, but I think the fourth song in would be my favorite. I'm pretty impressed with it. It's really good.